Hey, as we know, life is full of surprises, both good and bad, and the day-to-day journey is full of unforeseen obstacles, and sometimes it's hard for us to see our way through. Beyond the normal mundane or where unscripted dreams live, join us for thought-provoking discussions and interviews to help us navigate through the fog and create our own path. We are the Unscripted Dream Podcast, operating outside the margins to motivate and inspire our audience. Before we go further, man, make sure you click on that like and subscribe button. We would definitely appreciate that. So today we're going to be talking business, some serious business. So we're going to start our topic off for this episode as wealth strategies. Moving forward, I just want to bring on, or Marcus and myself would like to introduce a person that we brought on that we know pretty well. And he does this thing for a living. So instead of us giving a disclaimer about not being financial advisors, we actually brought on a financial advisor this time. So I'm gonna let him introduce himself to you guys.
Well, hello everybody. My name is Calvin Washington III, and I'm a registered representative with the New York Life Insurance Company. And like Joe mentioned, I've been knowing Marcus and Joe since back in like spring '09, and so there's some years invested within this relationship. So really excited to be here with you guys.
Well, we're glad to have you, man. Let's just get to it, I guess. So as we start off with our first talking point for today, man, my question to you is, what is life insurance?
Oh man, okay, all right. Well, life insurance is where a person says, "Hey, I want to sit down. I want to figure out a strategy to lock in either my salary, lock in my mortgage, lock in education for people that have young families." But it's really sitting down and understanding that you're transferring the risk to like a company that is going to pay. So a lot of times when people are shopping for insurance, I always like to tell them the rule of thumb shouldn't really be about the pricing. It should really be about the financial strength of a company. You want to do business with a company that has a history of paying. Not to get off in this story, but a lot of stories kind of help set the tone. And one thing that I noticed when I first started is that my uncle told me this a long time ago when I got into the industry that with any claims process, whether it be property and casualty insurance, life and health insurance, you're selling and educating people on the claims process and that we have a history of paying. So rule of thumb for people that are out there listening, always make sure you do your homework. Whoever you do business with, make sure that they have a history of financial strength and pain because at times of claim, the last thing somebody wants to hear is, "Hey, sorry, we ran out of money this month, but I kind of hollered at us at the next month." Like that's just at a time of business, it's just nothing to play around with. So that's one thing I learned, rule of thumb, is that man, it's not about the price because the price we can get it down to your budget, but it's really about the financial strength. A lot of people don't understand that because when they're shopping, you're just shopping, you're looking for a price, a low price at that, and you could be doing like business with a company like a hole in the wall company that doesn't have a history of paying and doesn't have the financial strength.
Understood, man.
Yeah.
That's how people catch cases too, man. So
No, that's people get sued too. So honestly, when I first started in this industry, man, I was, you just we're so nervous, man. You're trying to like this, you're trying to like see if you can do this. So I would really like sell to people's budget, not really understanding like how I was leaving myself open for litigation if something were to happen because somebody was underinsured. We're talking about, serious business here, man, on both sides of the pendulum. It's if you know the way money works, a lot of times people cringe when they hear like, a quarter of a million, half a million or a million. But if you know how money works, that money kind of goes fast. So if you effectively plan within your life insurance, you can achieve a lot of things as your family goes through grievance. So
So I have a question. It's just so you talked about just more so evaluating the solvency of these companies, right? And I'm thinking I'm thinking about me back when I didn't know anything.
uh-huh.
How is someone who's they've they've started to go down this journey? Because I think that's another piece too, is just like why like life insurance only seems to be used as far as like maximizing what you can get out of a policy
Yeah.
by a small percent of the population. So as far as avoiding the issues that you kind of just spoke of, as far as having a policy with a company that's not solvent, what
Yeah.
was this fresh green going through this process for the first time? What would they actually need to do to evaluate if that life insurance company is solvent or not?
So like one thing you want to do is like this. I always tell people, like, like, don't just take it from the insurance or the financial advisor or the registered representative's mouth. You have to do your own homework for yourself. So there's certain sites that you can check the financial strength of a company. So we have Standard and Poor's and Moody, and you can check the financial strength of an insurance company and do it. I think the know for yourself is it trumps all because you know that you can kill it with fact. If you hear your friends or family talking about this company or saying, "Hey, they don't have a strong financial strength, and you did your homework, and you see that, hey, there is financial strength in this company. They have a history of pain, because like I said, at the end of the day, when the time of claim, you want a company that has a history of pain, and just doing your homework, to sitting down and figuring out, like, hey, like, where do these companies stand? Like, what's their rating as far as Standard and Poor's and Moody's? Like, how do they look? Like, like in regards to, like, that strength.
Yeah. So explain more about who actually Moody,
Yeah.
who they are, who's Standard and Poor, who
Okay.
are these entities?
Okay, got you. So these are separate entities outside of insurance companies that, like, actually go through and assess the financial strength of these insurance companies. These are like outside analysts that are actually coming into these companies. They're figuring out, hey, like, what's your financial strength? I don't know if you, like, had a chance to look, but the rating of the United States government's rating went down this past year. That was like a really big thing.
Yeah.
And that was from that service. So Standard and Poor's, Fitch, and Moody's, those are like your people that are going to rate your insurance companies for solvency, to say, hey, they do have a history of paying. And hey, look, like, this is what we saw as far as their financial strength goes, as far as their portfolio, their reserves, the whole nine. It's really getting to, like, the weeds, but, like, you just really want to know the financial strength. So I think that's like the basics of anything before we kind of, like, jump into, like, the wealth part, because you can't just come and jump into the wealth part without not knowing who you're doing business with. I think it's really pivotal to understand who you're doing business with before you, like, really kind of jump into, like, the wealth strategies. So I spend a little bit of time on this because this is really important. And I've been in the industry for over 5 years now. And like I said, when I first started, man, I did it wrong. I was really nervous. I wasn't as confident as I am now. And I didn't understand financial strength. And so one thing I wanted to make sure to set the tone off right was that understanding that doing business with somebody that has good financial strength trumps all.
Gotcha, man. Thank you.
I don't
Thank
know.
So just next question I have for you, because you bring up a lot, and I really want us to be able to formulate, like, I want people to listen to this episode and actually come away with something actionable, right?
Okay.
So I'm thinking about, right, like, say, I know me in college, you talk about when we started, spring '09.
Oh, yeah.
I'm thinking about, like, right. And so, thinking about back then, like, I was like a kid just working at Kmart, college student, like had a couple minimum wage jobs, things like that. So what would you say for someone who's maybe like a college student or someone coming out of high school who doesn't have a lot of, like, actual income? Like,
Got you.
what do you think that person's strategy should be, like a young adult?
So for starters, for young adults, I know a lot of times, when you go meet with these advisors, they want you to have a lot of money and everything, but you're just getting started. So a lot of times I like to tell young people, hey, you should really sit down with somebody to understand, what your left and right limits are. Maybe start young, because the younger you are, the less expensive it's always going to be. It's all about the timing. So the younger you are, you're always going to be in much more healthier shape. And the reason why you see, like, your rates go up over the years as you age is because, you're not yesterday's health, so today's health is what trumps yesterday's health. So, like, like, young people, they're really good because, like, they're just getting started. They're just really trying to buy their time. And so a lot of times you really just want them to get started. So you really, I really want to talk about a lot of product, but you get them started off in something known as term, just to get them started, see if they qualify, because that's really important. At worst case scenario, there's something there in place where, we don't have to, like, kind of depend on, like, one of our biggest competitors, which is, like, GoFundMe, because, like, if there's something in place, that's the basic component of life insurance doing what it's supposed to do. Now, some of the things that we're going to get into later on in this conversation, that's a different objective, but at worst case scenario, I'm a firm believer that everybody should have something in place so if something happens to them, God forbid, that can play out and do what it's supposed to do. So that's the basic principle. That's the only thing I would tell anybody that's just getting started out. There's certain age parameters. I'm like, I don't know if this might be the right solution for you. There may be other things, but for young people, especially, it's so important to lock in your health and lock in that time, because you're not going to be able to get that time back, because you're going to age over years. And, again, you're going to the reason why young people and young children are always good is because young children, one, they have a healthy rap sheet. And then when you're young and you're 18, you still have a really healthy rap sheet. You're not really getting into a lot of surgeries as you inherit, as you encounter as you get older. So that's one thing to think about for young people.
So, like, one of the things I can think of when I was younger is that I thought I was invincible. Now, being a little bit older, I don't feel that way. But, so, but I think that would be just kind of considering one of the, like, if we had this conversation and I was like 17, 18 years old, I don't care about what you have to say, right?
Exactly.
But but the way you present it, like you present it from a place of wisdom where you actually understand the value of actually taking advantage of that. So what would you say, I guess, the mindset should be of, and this goes into kind of thinking outside of the box
You
too,
know, all right.
is that like how many like young people would you say, whatever the age range that is? I don't want to put anybody in a box, but I know you probably have demographics
Yeah.
that you work with, but
Oh,
like, what are the amount of people that are maybe like 18 to 25 that are actually taking advantage of what like life insurance actually has to offer?
oh man, there's some people that are taking advantage as far as the demographics goes, age range. I would really say the 18-year-olds, they're just getting really started. You know, they're just kind of like really green, as you just mentioned. But like the sweet spot is maybe like that 25-year-old that started to get into like that first real career job, you know, in corporate America, or maybe starting their own business. That's a sweet spot because now at this point they're starting to get started in life and actually, you know, move away from like either college, maybe just start to move out on their own, moving from mom and dad. So like those are the people that are just starting to like kind of like buy in a little bit and thinking outside the box. So I would say maybe the 25 age range is really, you know, the really the sweet spot. And again, some people do have people that can start these things for them when they're much, much younger. But typically the average 18 to 25-year-old, as you guys just gave me that scope, I would say the 25-year-old is usually the one that's saying, okay, what else can I do with life insurance outside of the capacity of just using it for like, you know, when I pass away? The 18-year-old is still kind of just getting started. You know, honestly, I wouldn't even say I'd be with too many 18-year-olds. I mean, I can count on maybe one or two hands, on the one hand, like really like how many 18-year-olds I've met with in my capacity here. But I would really say like 22 to 25 is usually where I see, you know, like some serious thought and some serious consideration about the other things that you can do outside of the life insurance capacity. If that answers your question.
Okay. So I guess with that being said, man, like what are some like serious misconceptions about
Oh
like
man,
life insurance?
I got to tell you, man, like there's two things I'm looking forward to this week. It was taco night, which was yesterday, and this conversation that we're getting ready to have. Because like, man, like there's so many, like, there's so many misconceptions, man. Like, you know, like, and we dealing with this every day. One thing that I had to tell myself and have a reality check with is that, hey, you know, you work with this every day. The average Joe doesn't see this, you know, so you got to kind of give them a little bit of grace and understand that, you know, this isn't talked about in a lot of communities. So really my passion is really those that like to sit outside and think outside the box when it comes to life insurance, because man, the wealth strategies that are afforded to you, if you think outside the box, are unlimited. So one thing I like is that there's different things that you can do with life insurance while you're still living, right? So that's one taboo that we have never discussed before in our community. You know, we've been taught for years and years and years. Now, life insurance is for life insurance. This is where when you pass away, it's on your life, right? But meanwhile, they're like the wealthy taking advantage of strategies as far as like, you know, providing for retirement income, supplementing that with their 401k, maybe getting something where they can plan for education for their children through the simple principle of life insurance. Or even maybe locking in a mortgage. If something were to happen to them, God forbid, there's a mortgage, or even locking in your salary. But it's just not talked about within our community. It's just really unfortunate because that's part of the reason why the wealth gap exists, because you have your wealthy that were taking advantage of different strategies where to get tax-free income. Meanwhile, you know, we've been told and trained for years and conditioned that, hey, you know, term insurance is just all you really need. That's it. And that's why there's this big disparity within the wealth community. So one thing that people have been using as like a pseudo-like investment is your typical full life insurance. I don't really want to like dive in too much into the product because it kind of muddies the waters. But one thing I want to talk about was that, you know, understanding, putting together those principles that we talked about earlier in the conversation about making sure, you know, you're doing business with somebody that has good financial strength. That's because, you know, there's some things that exist within this capacity that I sit at in New York Life where I would have never known if I would have came here. So for instance, one thing that I like to pose out this as a good filler is like, you know, I don't know, Marcus, if anybody ever asked you guys questions, but what do you guys know about like a dividend of some sort? Like, have you ever heard of a dividend?
Yeah, you know. All right. So listen, I know you're doing stuff because people are listening, right?
No, you can
But
never days.
but no, right? Because I'm an investor, so yeah, I know what a dividend is, right? So, but no, but not everybody understand. Like, but not everybody understands that. So I guess, tell me, can you explain
Yeah,
why
yeah,
that's
exactly.
important to
It's not, I'm not getting a dividend. It's like a two-part answer actually. So a dividend
Okay.
basically is like, hey, you know, When a company at the end of the year, they say, hey, look, we got so much profit left over from all of our investments. This is great. This is dandy. How do we pay this out to like our number ones, our day ones, our shareholders, our investors, right? So they pay out a dividend of some sort to their shareholders. Now, this is the part where I'm a little biased because there's this thing that we have as we just talked about, a dividend. Now, Marcus, I guarantee you that you try to do your insurance through your car insurance through some type of stockholder company. So let's say maybe like
Yeah.
Progressive, State Farm. Those people have to answer the stockholders. They answer to Wall Street.
Yeah.
Whereas like on this side of the house at New York Life, we only share our dividends with our policyholders. So in hindsight,
Mhm.
our policyholders are our investors. And so that's the only way you really can kind of get into that dividend of some sort. So that's why I'm really, really excited about like why we're here about as far as like wealth strategies. So now that we understand like what the dividend is, that's what's funding and helping people be able to create pensions of some sort, or funding for education, or funding for a business of some sort in the future. But again, it's taking us off of that. And what like what's the word I'm looking for? Weaning us off of that mentality that we've been taught for years and trained
Yeah.
to think that, hey, this life insurance for life insurance. Because man, when I first got into the industry, I didn't think that even existed. I knew that people had policies before that benefited from having a policy, but that was because somebody passed away. But
Yeah.
I mean, the first time I ever even heard somebody say, hey, look, I took my policy while still living. I didn't believe it because you just don't think those things exist. And so there are people right now in today's world that are creating pensions within their own life insurance plan. And I know you're probably wondering like how they're able to do that. Well, you pay your life insurance premiums with after tax dollars. So you're not a C corporation, so that money has already been taxed. So when they, in the eyes of the IRS, they're like, well, wait, this money's already been taxed. So you're paying your life insurance premiums with life insurance premium. That's it. You're not trying to do anything else. You're paying your life insurance premiums. Meanwhile, like you're saving and creating some type of equity within your policy that grows maybe 2 to 5 years down the line. But then at some point in time, you own this policy, and it's a permanent policy that you can one, tap into when you are retiring or on hard times. But then on the flip side, you also have something that's going to be a payout to like life insurance, as far as like paying out to your beneficiaries. And that's the component of life insurance, but you're really killing two birds with one stone. I know it's a lot to really kind of wrap your mind around, but really when you sit down and think outside the box, you're really able to achieve those two objectives, the simple principle of life insurance. And again, this principle is not talked about in our community a lot, as it should be, but it's a great starter for those that are trying to, they already have something set up within the life insurance portfolio. They're trying to maybe enhance it or maybe make it a little bit better and turn it into a permanent solution. So did that kind of like answer a little bit about what we're trying to achieve here?
Yeah. You took us a lot of places there, Calvin, but I want to, I want to go.
I'm really excited about this stuff, man, because this is like my passion,
So
man. So I'm sorry.
you mentioned some things that I think it's really like, it's really important. And I think a lot of people it gets kind of overlooked, and it's about just the feeling that people have. I remember just like you're saying, Calvin, I remember the first time somebody told me like there's more to do with, I always associated life insurance with like a death policy, like it pays
Right.
out when somebody dies, right?
You're right.
So, and I thought that until I actually like worked in insurance and I like had a license, understood like, oh, there's like a whole bunch of like
Yeah.
way more stuff you can do with insurance products.
Yes.
And now, and once you understand it, it makes sense. But because like somebody, like you might be listening to this episode, you might have spent 20, 30, 40 years of your life trying to figure out, you know what, trying to figure out, how to navigate money,
Yeah.
trying to figure out like, how do
Yeah.
you maximize these things? And it's really that there's a level of, when you talk about thinking outside of the box, there's a level of, we almost have to decondition ourselves to
Yeah.
these historical kind of means in which we kind of look at money and the relationship that we have with these policies. Like you mentioned, like a part of being young and in good health is that it's kind of a hidden advantage. But unless somebody tells you that, you don't know.
No, you
So
don't.
me, like I said, like when I was running around 10 years younger, feeling invincible, there was actually an advantage. Because think of it like the way I see it, right? Is when I was 24, like I was still in college actually, but but I wasn't making a lot of money.
Uh-huh.
But what I didn't know is that, like you explained, is that I had a hidden advantage of just being youthful that
Yeah.
I could have used to my advantage. That I didn't, like, I chose my ignorance I didn't know, so I didn't take advantage of it. Right. So now
Yeah.
I'm older and I know my premium, like, oh, that's just going to cost more for me because I'm a little bit older. But I think that what you're saying and what you're sharing here is very important because there's one thing, it's one thing to not understand, like to not know. But once somebody kind of gives you that exposure, like what you're kind of doing with us today, once you provide that exposure, I feel like it's no longer an excuse to not take advantage of the strategies once you know that you actually have someone and there's a source of information that actually provides that. Cause now what you know, like it's an excuse. Like, you know,
Like, and Marcus, one thing that you said that I really like. So like, I'll use my daughter as an example. So my daughter is just turned 2 years old and we have a couple policies for her on the side. And one thing that kind of like, there's a huge, you can see the disparity, like, the amount of insurance that she has is, to me, is chips compared to like what it would be for me to try to get that type of permanent insurance
yeah,
at this age. I mean, like, there's a huge difference. So, I mean, again, like you're really playing with time. Like young children are like prime age because they're young. They don't have a lot of things wrong with them as far as health goes. I mean, they're coming into this world. I would say even 10-year-olds, 15-year-olds, all the way up until I think the age is like 17. Those are prime ages because again, you'll never be that age ever again. You're young. You shouldn't have any driving issues. You shouldn't have too many medical issues, God forbid. But those that are able to at a young age and lock in a permanent rate, that's peace of mind because like you go like as time goes, you're gonna have something that's growing in value that's keeping up with inflation. And you're not even realizing that you're saving and growing money over time. So that's another thing that we didn't really get to kind of get into. A lot of things, like just as human beings, how we work. A lot of times, the reason why our savings doesn't work to the highest degree is because we have easy access to that money and we can see it.
mm,
So if we can touch it, we can be like, oh, I'm gonna move some. You ever heard somebody say, I'm gonna move some things around to make things work?
yeah,
Right?
yeah,
We can do.
yeah.
So like, whereas like like with your actual like your policy, like your permanent solution, you're able to see that you're saving money over time that you can't even see to the point where you're able to tap into that money tax free. And it honestly is like seeing a unicorn because it acts like if it doesn't exist, but it does exist, man. I can tell you, as you mentioned, I see it every day. And maybe for the next episode, I'll advise like how I almost lost my first $2 million deals. But maybe that's for another conversation. But man,
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
an advantage of this, man. And it's like, wow, like, and it's not like, that this is like foreign information. This information exists. There are different communities taking advantage of this stuff. Like they're eating this stuff up because they know how this stuff works as far as like, the timing of money and like, having that time to be able to let your money like nest and be able to, accrue interest or accrue some dividends over time, man. So it is, again, it's really just thinking outside the box and like shifting your thinking around like the whole component of life insurance and how it's supposed to be worked and executed because there's so many things that you can do. As I mentioned, I sound like a broken record, but there's so many things that you can do um, with some of the solutions that we offer or that are available to the community is just really not talked about. And that's the unfortunate thing. It takes guys like me and people that are for the community to understand and get back into the community and just say, hey, look, no, these are the things that our competitors, these are the things that other people, other communities are taking advantage of that we are not. Quite frank, it's hard to say that because it's like, man, like, when it comes to us, we are so, it's hard. Like we're so wired to think the way we think. We put more investment into like our phones than like we do our actual lives. And it's really unfortunate because the insurance that we put on this, me as a person, my life is worth more than that phone. And sometimes we have it twisted as far as like our thinking and the things that we value in our life.
Yeah, and I think that I appreciate you sharing everything you shared, Calvin. I definitely want to hear about you about to blow these couple of little dips, but just pulling. I know because we're about to wrap, but I think that what you shared here today, just on this episode, is very important, and I think that a lot of people get consumed, just like you said, people are consumed with their phones,
Yeah.
right? And there can be like a lack of long term thinking just for like immediate gratification, and just the way our society kind of tends to operate, and
Right.
understanding. Like I always like to bring it back to people look at the 1%, like they look at the 1% and they look at the 1% and people are like mad at these folks.
Yeah.
But
It-
when
it's-
you But I look at like not everybody who's wealthy is a supervillain. All
No.
right. Like that's not the case. That's not the case. But I also think that when people say you get these ideas that like you want to get rich, like I invest, there's a portion of my investing that is like very boring. Like the things that make me the most money are extremely boring, like boring as far as consistency with investing. And I think that right now, what kind of people see is that you villainize, like you get into this culture where people villainize people that are wealthy. But
Yeah.
you have to, I think there's this important, what's important to understand is that the 1%, like if you aspire to be like a top earner or something like that, or you want to find ways to leverage certain financial tools that you're going to operate in a way in which most people aren't operating.
Yeah.
And to do that, you're going to be in a place to where you really don't fit in with most people because because most people are not in the 1%.
No.
So when you listen to an episode like this and you hear Calvin speaking about all these things, he has all this information and you're listening to it and you feel like, oh wow, that's quite a bit. That's quite a bit of information that he went over. And as good as he did of breaking things down, there's still a responsibility on all of us at an
Yes.
individual level to pursue more information and to pursue clarity and gain knowledge in these areas. These are tools that the 1% use.
Yes.
These are tools. Now, people that are not in the 1%, they're probably not using these tools. So
No.
you have, I think it's really a thing to where you almost have to be comfortable not fitting in because because I know that Calvin, I know because you work with all these folks and I work in insurance too. There's a group of people who are leveraging and maximizing the potential of these actual tools that
Yes.
are available to them, right? And they live in this different pocket of the world. They're doing these like other things that most people wish they were doing, but just because they went the extra mile. And even if now I know some people are like, oh well, my parents didn't teach me that. Once you blame your parents, now it's your fault
Yeah.
because you know that they didn't teach you, so it's your responsibility. But I'm not trying to go on a rant at the end of this episode, man.
And
But
if you want to, Mark,
but
and you can come back to Michigan, you always reuse your license, man, and get back rocking around, man. Come on.
no, man, I'm out the game. But
We have a question. One thing I wanted to
yeah,
like
yeah,
mention this for everybody that's out there listening. One thing that you can do yourself as like this, like a free gem, like free chicken, as I would say, is that you can like take your salary that you make, like so, like whatever you did on your taxes last year, you take that and you multiply that times 20 years, right? So like just locking in your salary for like 20 years. So like especially if you have young children or you're married or like maybe you're a stay-at-home wife and your husband is the breadwinner. I want you to go ahead. Here's some free homework. So I want you to do the math of doing, hey, locking in the salary times 20 years, and that's your number. So for example, I just did a quick calculation. So I said I made $100,000. So $100,000 times 20 years is $2 million, right? At a minimum, that's where I should start out with when it comes to the basic principles of setting up my life insurance portfolio. That's a non-negotiable. If you think about it, you're locking in 20 years worth of your salary, and it's going to come out all at once within the life insurance component with the basic principles that we talked about earlier in this conversation. And I think that's really important to know before we start talking about those wealth strategies, because you cannot come to the game and not be prepared. So being prepared means setting up your portfolio so that when it's time to maybe create your own pension, you can do that because you already have stuff set up. So I just wanted to leave you with that little tidbit. I know that I gave a lot of gems, so I just wanted to make sure I gave that one because that one's really
yeah.
important.
No, I appreciate you, Calvin, man, coming through, sharing this knowledge, and we will find Joe. I
Yeah.
know you haven't heard from Joe.
Hey,
Back in
I'm
that-
here. Okay. I'm here.
So, so Joe, anything you want to say before we close out the episode?
Nah, man. I just think that this is what people are looking for. This is an actual financial advisor with certifications to back it up. So trust and believe his word.
Well, I appreciate it, guys. Thank you guys for having me. I'm looking forward to the next one.
Take care. Be safe.
Yes, sir.
Gapstone.